Chapter 3, How to Get the Most Out of This Book. We start with a quote from what looks like Goth, but I understand it's pronounced Gunta or something like that. All truly wise thoughts have been thought already thousands of times, but to make them truly ours, we must think them over again honestly till they take root in our personal experience. Education has been described as the only thing people will pay for and yet refuse to get. Most of us tend to be lazy. We are like the fellow who went into a college bookshop and asked for a book that would help him with his economics course. "Over here," the clerk said, "I have a wonderful little outline of economics. It will do half your work for you." "That's just what I'm looking for," replied the student. "Let me have 2 of them right away." "Huh? Get it?" No one ever learned to typewrite or drive a car, or perhaps do any complex thing, by just reading a book about it. A book can explain the rules and preferred techniques, but only practice and application will develop useful skill. Suppose, for example, you demonstrate for someone how to drive a car. Then you give him a booklet explaining the rules of the road. By this kind of study, he can learn enough about driving a car to answer almost any question, and even talk at length on how the controls of a car work. In a verbal way, he will know, quote unquote, all about it. But until he has had actual experience and practice in driving, until he develops habit patterns that enable him to drive without consciously thinking of the mechanics, he will not be a safe driver. When he is actually driving, he should not be thinking to himself, "Now, if I want to go faster, I push my right foot down on the accelerator," or, "When I want to stop, I must be sure to remember to push the brake pedal with my right foot, not too hard, or I will slam my face in the wheel. And be sure it's the brake, not the gas I am pressing." Unless he drives largely by automatic habits, he is going to be an awkward, insecure, dangerous driver. The same thing applies to using the principles of thinking in our everyday lives. Just knowing about them, even though we can make 100% on any written test, or stand before an audience and teach others our book lore, is not going to do us any good on life's busy firing line until we have made them a part of our automatic thinking habits. This book contains only tested and workable tools for improving our thinking ability. But like any tools, they do not work by themselves. We must learn to use them skillfully before they will help us live more successful and happier lives. If we do not root these thinking habits deeply into our nervous systems, we are just not going to be able to use them when we need them most. Our greatest need for straight thinking usually occurs when things are happening fast and we must act quickly. If we are driving a car and a child runs in front of us, whether we kill that child depends upon how well we have learned proper driving habits. In most emergencies, it is our automatic habits that pull us through, not how much verbal knowledge we have filed away in the dead storage compartments of our brains. to get started. The first step in pushing the knowledge in this book to work is to start thinking in terms of verbal maps. Use that notion at every possible opportunity. Whether you use these words in conversation is optional. The important thing is to use the idea of verbal maps in your own thinking. Instead of saying to yourself, "I've got to get this matter straight," for the next few months, say instead, "I need a verbal map that adequately represents the territory." Instead of thinking, "That won't work," say to yourself, "That verbal map has no predictability." As you study the principles in the coming chapters, you will find yourself saying, "Why, that's just common sense thinking. I already know that." And up to a point, that you will be right. All of us know the principles in this book, and all of us use them now and then, but we have not understood them well enough to apply them consistently. And as with all imperfectly learned skills, they leave us just when we most need them. Here is a list of suggestions which people have found helpful in getting the most out of this book. 1. Remember that most of your future mistakes will be due to failure to apply the principles explained here. When something goes wrong, turn to the 6 tools for thinking explained in the next 6 chapters and see how they will help you to avoid similar mistakes. 2. One of the best ways to understand something is to try to explain it to others. I'm going to have a pause here. Okay, back to 2. One of the best ways to understand something is to try to explain it to others. If you want to test your own understanding of this new way of thinking, try springing it on some of your friends. Undoubtedly, you will discover something all teachers know, that the person giving instruction often learns more than the person receiving it. But always remember that the value of this book lies not in how well you can talk about it, but rather in the changes for the better it makes in your own thinking habits, as shown in your day-to-day actions and problem solving. 3. Begin as soon as possible to apply the tools for thinking in the so-called little things of life. For training purposes, go out of your way to get the quote-unquote feel of them at work. Take time out to think before you act. Do everything you can to make the 6 tools for thinking a part of your permanent mental furniture. 4. After you read each section, stop and try to give examples of the principles from your own experience. After all, you are just wasting your time reading unless you can, somehow, begin to connect these principles with your own life. As Burke put it, to read without reflecting is like eating without digesting. 5. Read each chapter at least twice. I guess I would translate that into listen to each chapter at least twice. Or you could get the book, read it, and listen to it. Back to the text. Sorry. Remember, you are not merely reading for information. You are trying to form better thinking habits that help you get what you want out of life. You will find deeper meaning with each reading. Edison said, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." Since you have read this far or listened this far in Taming Your Mind, you have the 1% inspiration. Now do a little sweating. You will find the results worth it. To sum up, you will be wasting your time if you don't do your best to work these thinking habits deeply into your nervous system. In a sense, no one can teach you how to think or how to improve your thinking ability. It is only possible to explain more effective habits of thinking. Then it's your move. Okay, that's the end of the text in chapter 3. This is how to develop your thinking ability, copyright 1950, and it was renamed when Ken Keyes got the copyright back from the publisher in 1975. And it was renamed to Taming Your Mind. And I'm reading this audio book of it on YouTube with the intention of making a kind of a book report about general semantics, science and sanity, Taming Your Mind, Wendell Johnson's People in Quandaries, and other classic books about general semantics. I'm going to do a transition on the YouTube video. Wow, pretty professional production values, huh, kids? Anyway, there's Science and Sanity, which is the foundational book of general semantics. If you're interested in reading it, it is a tough read. He makes up a lot of abbreviations for both important words as well as concepts like etc. being represented by period, comma, which means you really have to read carefully sometimes. Let's see. There's cartoons. We have a homeless person at the city dump, and the caption is, "Learn to think straight. Why would I waste my time like that?" And actually that's just the one cartoon in this chapter, but it is a pretty short chapter. The point he's making about you will be wasting your time if you don't actually practice these techniques is a point I'd like to also make. Essentially, quote unquote, doing general semantics or taming your mind, the book title really says what it's doing, is a practice, much like practicing yoga is a tool for your body. And all of the things seem fairly obvious, but if you don't make them a habit, if you think in terms of absolutes all the time when it doesn't matter, because it's not a really important question, you'll find yourself thinking in absolutes when you really have to think about something important where it would help to keep in mind the tools for thinking, but it's not a matter of keeping them in mind. It's always using them so that you use them as a matter of habit. I feel like I'm preaching here, and I'm really just trying to explain that point. It's something that Korzybski in Science and Sanity recommends, a semantic pause to allow you to engage your neocortex, because it takes a while compared to the deeper parts of your brain, like the amygdala and the thalamus, which are more invoked by your emotions. Let's see, what else can I tell you? I think I'm going to save further links and thoughts for the details so I can stop streaming and see if I can get a clean chapter 3 on October 28th, 2022 at 2:57 p.m. So don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell. Bye.